something happens, a fact happens, you lose a contract, or someone else is getting the promotion at work, or someone else has gotten the love of your life. All these are happenings, right? Well, what do they all have in common? They are facts. They just happen. What really matters, though, is what you do next after this fact occurs. What is the meaning that you are attaching to this happening, to this fact? Hey, my friends, it's Diane Armitage back again with the Catalyst Code, and I am so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that you tuned into this episode, and I think that you're really going to enjoy it. If you're brand new to my world, let me tell you, I tell a lot of stories, and today is going to be sort of a funny one, so I'm glad that you're here. Today, I want to talk about perception. And the reason it came up in my mind is that my best friend in Denver, Diana, she has this new amazing Siberian Husky puppy. Well, it actually was like this big, and now it's like this big. And her name is Dory. And she took a picture of her the other day because Dory was out on the cold, cold patio, laying there, and the snow was coming down, and she's enjoying herself out there. And it's brittle cold, brittle cold. The wind is howling. You can see her fur doing this. And my friend just like, I don't get it. She just absolutely loves it out there. I try to get her to come inside. She absolutely is not interested in coming inside. And I'm like, remember, she's a sled dog. This is how they're born. She is a sled dog. So anyway, it reminded me of this really funny story that happened back with my dog, Merlin. Now, Merlin has been gone for many, many years, but he was the love of my life. And he was a Great Pyrenees. He was giant. He was this big guy. He weighed about 150 pounds, and he had just all this hair. He was just huge. In fact, actually, if you gave him like a bath, he didn't really have that big of a body, but he had a lot of hair. He looked like a really big guy. And so he was just amazing. He was the love of my life. You're going to hear a lot about him. Well, Merlin and I, we actually lived in Columbine. And this was when I was working at Remax International. And I'd actually bought this house for the yard. So I bought the yard and the house came with it. Because, Merlin had to have some place to run. He had to have room and space to be. And so one day when I was working at Remax, it was about 45 minutes up the road. And it was really just one straight shot up this highway to Remax. And, 45 minutes was usually a good day, right? Well, we start getting these snow flurries at the office. And then the snow flurries start getting bigger and bigger. And they hadn't really predicted a blizzard. But in a matter of a couple of hours, we were definitely in the middle of a blizzard. And it was starting to get like whiteout conditions out there. And so they told all of us to go home. They're like, get home safely. We're closing the office. Get home. Well, the whole morning, I just been gnawing my fingernails to the quick because I was so sure that I had left Merlin out in the freezing cold in the backyard. And I had two doggy doors, one from the backyard into the garage, and then one from the garage into the kitchen. And they were both sizable. I mean, they could fit a raccoon if he wanted to come in because, Merlin was a big guy. But I knew that I had left both of the doors shut. I was absolutely sure of it. I was hoping it wasn't true, but I was pretty sure that this had happened. And I thought, oh my gosh, he is out in the cold and he is freezing in these brittle blizzard conditions. And so I drove all the way home. It took me like an hour and a half to get home, and I'm an absolute wreck. I'm absolutely terrified. I pull into the garage, and sure enough, I had left both of the doors closed. There was no way he could even have come into the garage. And so I go running into the kitchen, and I fling open the patio door, and there's Merlin on the patio table, on the patio table, on the patio. It's a big redwood table, and he looks at me like a sphinx. He just barely turns his head and looks at me like, hey, and he is covered in snow. There's at least 6 inches of snow around him on the patio table. So he's been out here for a while, and he's just got at least a couple inches of snow all over his body. And he's laying there with his feet out and his nostrils are quivering, and he's having the time of his life. He's having the greatest time in the world. And I'm like, Merlin, you got to come inside. I know that you are freezing. And he, in his sphinx-like way, turns and looks at me like, what are you talking about, woman? This is fantastic. This is what perception is. This is what perception is. Two beings in the very same place, same circumstance. I was terrified that he would be frozen to death, and he was horrified that I would actually insist that he come inside when he was communing with his element. This is what perception can do to you, to you. You can be in a space, in a circumstance, a situation that your perception chooses to define in a whole different way. Now, I talk about this a lot in my Tower of Power thesis. My Tower of Power concept, it's something you're going to hear about from time to time. And I'll tell you the entire story soon enough in one of the upcoming episodes. Or you can go to my website, dianearmitage.com/my tower, and you can listen to the masterclass on my Tower of Power for free. No worries, right? But in a nutshell, this whole thing landed on me about a year ago, and it's about your 6 mental factors. Each of us human beings have 6 mental factors that put us above any other creation on the planet, right? And of those 6 factors, I often say that there's really only 4 mental factors. You have 4 mental factors, and then you have 2 other factors that I would say are more energetic or spiritual in nature, because they're the ones that are directly connected to the energy that you are connected to and corresponding with all of the energy out there. But I can get to all that later. So our 6 factors. So we have reason, memory, perception, will, imagination, and intuition. I'll say that again. Reason, memory, will, perception, imagination, and intuition. Now, unbeknownst to most of us, the Tower of Power operates in a certain set way. And this is what came to me about a year ago. It operates from the top down, and certain factors are always in order. And when you figure that out, you can apply this knowledge to every single aspect of your life to create very, very fast change. I mean, lightning fast change. Okay. But let me get back to the perception thing, because the perception thing sits right there in the middle of the Tower of Power. It's in the middle, right? So now think about this. How you perceive something in your life, or how you perceive your life, period, can be hugely amazing or hugely detrimental to you. All right, so let me give you an example. Say an event happens, right? Something happens, a fact happens, you lose a contract, or maybe you're not getting enough contracts in the door, or someone else is getting the promotion at work, or someone else has gotten the love of your life, or someone in the boardroom or an office meeting or even at your kitchen table is always interrupting you. Someone cut you off in traffic. All these are happenings, right? Well, what do they all have in common? They are facts. They are facts. They just happened. What really matters, though, is what you do next after this fact occurs. I'm going to say that again. What really matters is what you do next after this fact occurs. And that is this. What is the meaning that you are attaching to this happening, to this fact? What is the meaning? This becomes your perception. And your perception, even on just one happening happening the first time, changes your entire story. It can change your entire trajectory. It can change your entire life. One of Wayne Dyer's most famous quotes is, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. Well, our beloved Wayne Dyer meant that in a good way. He was saying all you have to do is change your perception about how bad, grimy, crappy, hard, fill in the blank adjective you choose about your life. And when you change that perception to fulfilling, exciting, resonating, joyful, meaningful, purposeful, fill in those blank adjectives, that shift alone can shift your life's trajectory. It really does work that way. But most people don't see it in that happening in their lives. They tell me, Diane, I'm doing these affirmations. I'm writing these gratitudes. I'm doing everything right day after day after day. And nothing is changing. Why is this? Because your perception is tied into 2 other mental factors, your memory and your reasoning mind. Oh, that reasonable mind, which sits all the way at the bottom of your Tower of Power. Now, typically, when you try positive thinking and affirmations and all of that, your reasonable mind pokes up its head. It's like a little prairie dog and says, no, wait a minute, you know this stuff doesn't work. In fact, you've secretly thought that people who do affirmations and write gold cards are a little, you know, batty or frivolous, or maybe they're desperate. So just looking at you and your life right now, I mean, how? How would you make that kind of change? How would you make that kind of money? Why do you think you have that kind of skill or talent to embark on that thing in the first place? And those people that you want the promotion from, I mean, let's face it, they're never going to respect you because you really don't matter. You're really just not that important. You're really not that smart. In fact, in most people's lives, the reasonable mind has a field day with their perception of themselves. And then there's your memory. Your memory is the go along to get along factor. I'm just going along to get along. In fact, most cases, when things aren't going well for you, your memory is that kind of medium-sized kid who gangs up with the big bully kid, which is your reasoning mind, to tell you, hey, you're trying to shift your perception about yourself or a situation. Well, you're kind of a known loser who's never been able to shift your life before. I mean, this stuff doesn't work because let's face it, it's never worked for you before. It's never worked out before. You've never had the money show up before. You've always failed at such and so. I mean, remember when you tried that one big idea before and you landed on your face? In fact, all of your memories are tied to your perception. Your memories about the facts of your life, the happenings, the events, the good, the bad, the ugly, the magnificent, all those memories are what either are lifting you up into a better and better space and life because your perception of you is strong and confident, or it's squashing yourself down to just the way it's always been for me. This is the way it's always been for me. I don't really succeed. I don't really achieve what I want. I don't really get the things that I really deserve or desire. Maybe I don't even deserve them. Trust me, my friend. This is your reasoning mind and your memory ganging up on you and hurling snowballs at you from the bridge, like in the movie Elf. Remember that scene? They're coming at you from all angles. They're just pummeling you. Okay, so let's go back to, I'll get to Elf in a minute. That was an idea that just popped up. Let's get back to Merlin. Me and Merlin squaring off on the foot deep snow, on the patio. And I'm like, come on in. My reasoning mind has been blatting at me all morning long about what a terrible dog mom I am, how thoughtless I had been, how no dog would be able to withstand this blizzard. And yes, had it not been Merlin, I really could have been in trouble. But see, in this case, my reasoning mind, it didn't even want me to remember that Great Pyrenees dogs are typically left out all day and all night on freezing hills in the Alps. Where the Pyrenees are, Alps, to protect sheep and livestock from wolves and bears. Okay, so my memory, well, I'd never previously left a previously owned dog out in the freezing elements, but I had seen and cried over plenty of those videos that show people rescuing these poor dogs from terrible living situations in someone's backyard, or they're caged in the freezing elements and they're almost dead and they're starving and they're miserable. And all the drive home, my built-in YouTube brain just kept rolling one reel after another of those terrible images. Meanwhile, Merlin's reasoning mind is saying, okay, she usually works till 5. She's home by 5:45. That gives me at least another 4 hours of quiet bliss, hanging out in this quiet bliss. And he was not happy that I messed with his grand day's plan. Okay, so you're saying, okay, what do you and your fur bulldog have anything to do with my perception? because your perception of a thing that happens, a fact that happens, will always and forever, every single time, be skewed in one direction or another, and then tucked into your memory banks like that. In a nanosecond, tucked into your memory banks. Why do you think we call it memory banks? Banks. Because you are adding shekels of perceptive emotion every single moment of every single day. You're building up your memory banks one way or another. You have wrapped this fact in the emotional blanket of your perception, and perception is all about emotion in the moment. But that emotion you assign will change your entire trajectory immediately. And if you're not careful, a negative assignment becomes a negative memory. And when that happening or that fact turns up again in your life somehow, some way, maybe not even associated with you personally, you may see somebody else cut somebody else off in traffic and you respond emotionally. See, your reasoning mind says, yep, see, that's just the way it happens every single time. Now, I just mentioned the famous snowball attack scene in Elf. If you haven't seen the movie Elf, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but I bet you can find the snowball attack scene in a YouTube clip. So these bullies at school had ganged up on Elf's stepbrother. So Elf is actually named Buddy, and he's been raised by the elves and Santa, and he comes down to find his real father, and he discovers that he also has a stepbrother whose name is, I think his name is Michael, and he's maybe 10. And he's walking his brother home from school, and the bullies start this full-on snowball attack. Well, Buddy's stepbrother, Michael, immediately perceives in an instant the situation as harrowing and dangerous, and he felt like a doomed, trapped kid. Why? Because he'd been through this before, and he'd seen other kids endure this before. That's memory. Buddy, meanwhile, Big Elf, he responded as if this was the greatest, most fun game to suddenly show up on his walk home from his brother's school. Why? Because he had plenty of snowball fights in the North Pole with his fellow elves, and he loved all of the fun they had had. When the very first snowball fight happened way back when Buddy was actually a small kid, he experienced that happening as a fun, inclusive, boisterous community event. His perception at that very moment solidified a memory. And that memory was entirely different from the memory that Michael had in his mind. And so every single snowball fight, including this one, was going to be a whole bunch of fun. Now, if you think about it, the entire Elf movie was really about one theme, wasn't it? How one man's dauntless, emotional perception of life changed an entire city's emotional perception of what the spirit of Christmas was all about. This is the incredible power of perception. Once you begin to recognize detrimental thoughts and emotions sprouting in your head about your potential success or your very shaky achievement, remember that this is just a shadow of your past thinking and your past perceptions. This fog of perception can be lifted in an instant, and the fastest way to recognize it is to check in on how you're feeling when a certain thing happens. Now, first, you're going to realize how fast this happens, how fast the perception and the emotional attachment to this thing happens. Like the next time somebody cuts you off in traffic, or the next time your spouse or your kid interrupts you at the table. So rather than spend the next 10 years in therapy trying to figure out why you respond negatively as you do, I would suggest you try this instead. Immediately tell yourself, it's time to do a Merlin. It's time to do a Merlin. It's about shifting the immediate emotional response. And then, once you've shifted the immediate emotional response, you can go back and say, well, wait a minute. Okay, let me look at all the memories that I have in my life where people praised me for what I had to say. Complete strangers slowed down and waved me into traffic. Let me think about all the memories I have of success that I created in my life, where I did achieve, where I did make things happen, where I didn't even know how it was going to happen, but I knew that I had to have it and it happened. This is how you bolster and shift your perceptional memory. You're shifting the perception on how your life is a success, how you really do matter. You have as many and many more perceptions of great successes and achievements in your life than you think you do. But the tendency, from the way we've been raised, from the circumstances and external circumstances around us, the tendency is to move into the negative space before moving into the positive space. You don't have to do that anymore. As you move forward, you begin to count those new daily successes as part of that perceptional formula to rise up, to stay above, and to continue forward, knowing that your perception is what you choose for yourself. Your perception is what you choose for yourself. You're not going to let it take you down the rabbit hole any longer. This is perception. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It's like my dog Merlin hanging out on the patio table. He wasn't concerned about my perception, about the blizzard and him being outside. He cared about his blissful state. This is perception. How you treat the event, the fact, the occurrence. This is the building block of your life. So, what do you prefer? Mark my words. Change your perception, and your world will mold itself around it. Your reality will mold itself around your perception. That's my short lesson for today. I look forward to seeing you back on the Catalyst Code. Please like, subscribe, and share this with the people in your world. And thank you for being in my world. Make it a great day, and I'll see you next week.